Mr. Kip Sorensen, what's up, brother? It's so great to have you back after what seems like, I don't know, a month or something of not having you, but it's probably only been a week or two. Maybe it's just been a week. I don't know. I'm having withdrawals from Kip, so.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. I was 2 weeks out.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right. Seems longer, brother. Seems longer. Glad to have you back. We had some good fill-ins. Sean filled in, always does a wonderful job. And then last week, Steve filled in and got a lot of good feedback on Steve as well.
Yeah,
So
both did great. I figured I'd better get back before I get replaced. So,
yeah, you better get back and you better start stepping up your game. Two things that you need to work on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Competition.
No, these guys are awesome. And I want to say too, like, I'm really grateful that we just have guys who want to be part of this. You know, they want to be involved. They want to help share their knowledge, their expertise, their experience. And I think that's a testament to the mission of Order of Man, which is, let me back up and say it this way. There's a lot of men's movements out there that revolve around a central figurehead, like the sun and the planets orbiting the sun. And the problem with that is that we as men are flawed. and I am flawed and I mess up. And a lot of you guys are familiar with my own several large mistakes that I've made over the past several years. If you base a movement around a person, with the exception of Jesus Christ, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Because we're flawed. We're imperfect. But if you base the movement around an idea, something that stands the test of time, that's an eternal principle, that is true regardless of who is sharing it and how they're delivering that message, I think it has an opportunity to stand on its own legs, regardless of what the leader or the founder or the figurehead or the front-facing person of the movement might do or be or whatever. So I'm so grateful, and I think one of the things that we did really right here is that we made this about the movement and the men, not about me or anybody else in the organization. And I think that was a really good move in looking back, and I think that's a good move we made. So I'm glad we did that.
Absolutely. We have so many men in the Iron Council willing to serve, step up in very serious ways for no other reason other than they're bought into the importance and they've realized the impact of what we're doing, and the objective of what we're trying to accomplish. And that in itself is so powerful. So powerful. I love it, brother.
Kip, I was thinking one thing that I wanted to hear what you thought about this. I haven't run this past you, so I thought we'd just do it here on the podcast. I think it'd be fun to do like a headline segment where we pull a couple of headlines. Maybe you pull one headline from, culture, and I'll pull a headline every single week. And it could be something funny or insane. It could be something serious. It could be political or in the entertainment industry or whatever.
Yeah.
But every week you'd pull a headline and you'd share it with me and I'd give you my thoughts and vice versa. And then I'd share my headline with you. You'd give me your thoughts and vice versa. And then we can get into the questions. I think that might add an interesting cultural dynamic. And I think that's important because the conversations that we're having are not just amongst ourselves, and they don't just impact ourselves, they impact culture. I see a lot of men complaining about things that they see that are going wrong in society, and I agree with a lot of what they're upset about. So let's start having these conversations. Let's start talking about it and hash these things out, and then figure out a way where we can actually move forward and what we can do. An example of that is I made a post earlier in the week, last week rather, about, I said something to the effect of, if you're a girl dad, you hear that term a lot, girl dads, girl dad power, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. If you're a girl dad and you sit on the sidelines as your daughter is physically abused by a boy pretending to be a girl, you're pathetic. That's what I said.
Yeah.
And I had overwhelmingly supportive comments on that agreed with that. But I wonder how many of those men would actually do anything. And then I had a few detractors like, oh, well, how could you be so bigoted? And shut up. Just shut up. I'm so tired of you bitching and moaning and crying and whining about something that is horrific. To see a man participate with women, especially in physically combative type sports where there's physicality associated with it.
Yeah.
And I'm sick of those men having the voices. And a lot of guys are like, well, what do we do? I don't know what to. What you do is you boycott, you stop playing, and you get all the other dads, the quote unquote proud girl dads, to stop participating, stop having their daughters participate. And then alternatively, you go create new leagues that ban boys from playing with your daughters. And I had one guy that I really respect, by the way, and he said, well, you know, Ryan, then they'll lose their scholarships and it's really hard. Lose their scholarships?
They're losing it anyway to the guys that are competing against them.
Exactly. The people, the awards and the accolades and the notoriety and the scholarships, they're going to lose those things anyways, to your point. And the other thing is, you know, 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 1,000 years ago, men standing up for what was right wasn't really about losing scholarships. You know what it was about? Yeah. Losing their wives and daughters to be raped and subjugated and enslaved, and their men imprisoned and put to work and murdered and sacrificed, losing their country, losing their culture. And we're complaining that our daughter might lose her scholarship.
Yeah.
Guys, if enough of us start talking about these issues, and more importantly, start having the real conversations that need to be had about what we ought to do about it, then this bullshit doesn't fly anymore. Yeah. If there's a team of 10 women and 8 of them won't compete because other men are participating in the league, how long does that happen? And you know what else happens? All the other schools and all the other towns that see that there was finally a town that decided to stand up because they had 8 to 10 strong, virtuous, righteous, capable men will start doing the same thing. This house of cards will fold. But not if we just sit around and complain and cry and say, oh, they won't get their scholarships. So okay, so what? The alternative is to go watch your daughter get beat up by a guy that's 6'4", 220 pounds and couldn't hack it in the men's league? Mm-mm. We need to have these conversations, guys. I'm fed up with it. I want to have the conversations, and I want to drive and compel us to take more action in our communities.
Yeah, I love that, man. I can't help but think we often justify these things because we jump to the conclusion of what would happen versus just simply asking ourselves, is it right? That's it. What is right is right. And the outcomes and the circumstances shouldn't be the determining factor sometimes when it comes to doing the honorable, correct thing. That's it. And it's the internal dialogue and all that noise that we add to, stop it. Is it right? Yes or no? And if it's no, then don't do it. If it's right, then do it. And we need to stop playing the mind F that we have with ourselves around justifying not doing things because the consequences will be a certain way or vice versa. It's silly. And there's no honor in that. There's absolutely no honor in it. And in the grand scheme of things too, right? Like you even use the example of scholarships, like, oh, they lose a scholarship. Well, what's the benefit of standing up for something difficult? What's the benefit for your daughter to see that in you? You don't think that impacts her in probably a more moral way than a scholarship? Man, us showing up powerfully is probably the most impactful thing that we could do for our families. Thus, it shouldn't be the last thing that we consider based upon other consequences.
Right. That we can get into a rabbit hole on whether or not the scholarship is worth a damn anyways, but we'll save that one for a different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless she's going to be a doctor or a lawyer or a CPA. Yeah. Is that really worth it? Probably not. Anyways,
yeah.
Soapbox, but I think that'd be fun. Like I said, we can do some lighthearted ones, like the Florida Man type headlines where you see this guy who, jumped in the bayou with an alligator and, got his leg chopped off, but, strangled the alligator versus some stuff like this. But we can do some fun things. So I think that'd be a cool addition.
I like it. Well, and to your point, what I really like about it is these are things that guys are thinking about anyway, right? And so this allows the conversation to be maybe applicable to whatever pressing issues and or events that might be going on. So that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. We'll do it. We'll start next week.
Sounds
so
great.
Your assignment is one headline. I'll bring one headline and we'll get after it. All right, let's get into questions today.
Yeah, so we're going to field questions first from the Iron Council. To learn more about the IC, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. We're going to be opening up membership to the Iron Council in the 15th of March. So you have a couple weeks to get ready and sign up. So once again, that's orderofman.com/Iron Council. First question, Dalton Brown. In the when shit hits the fan situation, what is the top 3 things to be prepared for?
I like that. I think Reese came in. He's like, by the way, SHTF means, shit hits. Thank you, Reese.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Although it did take me a second. I was like, okay, got it.
It took me a second too, admittedly. Mostly because I like to swear a little bit. I try not to, but I do like to swear. So I'd just rather say the full thing. But what are the 3 things to be aware of? Is that what he asked?
Yeah, top 3 things to be prepared for when things hit
prepared
the fan.
for. Yeah. So, so I have 3 things, and they're kind of like the softer sides of things. But number 1 is expect and be prepared for chaos. It's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a lot more chaotic. People are going to be confused. People aren't going to know what to do. There's a lot of chaos in these types of moments. So that's number 1. Number 2, expect emotionally driven responses. People are going to be very emotional. They're going to be upset, depending on the situation. Could be one of the most horrific and tragic days of their lives. They're confused. They're worried about the future and what might happen. And that, again, that's a scale, right? It's a spectrum. It might be something as small as, their boss yelled at them at work and they're confused and frustrated and upset about it, versus active shooter situation. And there's a lot of emotions and fear running around that, but it doesn't matter. It's all going to manifest itself as emotionally driven responses. And then the third I would say is ego. You're going to let your ego get in the way. You're going to think that you have it all figured out. You're going to feel threatened. You're going to want to posture and defend. And that isn't always the best thing to do in situations like that. So if those are the 3 things, again, chaos, emotionally driven responses by other people and yourself, and allowing your ego to get in the way, the best thing that you can do is to maintain a level head.
Yeah.
Be as calm, cool, and collected as you possibly can be. And I'm not saying don't feel emotion. I'm not saying don't feel fear. I'm not saying, don't have those thoughts. Those thoughts are actually going to manifest themselves, of course. But you are a man. And as a man, it's your duty in those situations to be the foundation, to be the rock, the bedrock that everybody else can lean on. So you're not going to cry. You're not going to break down. You're not going to react emotionally. You're not going to yell at people. You're not going to let your emotions get in the way when somebody else might have your ego get in the way when somebody else might have a better answer, and it doesn't make you feel as good because you're the quote unquote, self-designated leader. Somebody else might have a better solution. Get the ego out of the way. Like, the goal is to get your people through the circumstances in the best way possible. And, on this sign right here, it says protect, provide, preside. Preside is synonymous with leadership. It's your job as a man to lead those people in those difficult and challenging times. So that means you need to anticipate what might happen. You need to prepare for what might happen. And then when those situations come up, you've mitigated some of the risk, but you're also the man that everybody knows that they can go to because he's calm, cool, and collected. If we're going to take, we talk about jiu-jitsu a lot, right? And I've gone back to training. I'm loving it. And I was rolling the other night with this white belt, and he was strong. He was big and strong, and I saw him. He's this big, strong young man. And I saw he was a white belt. I'm like, I actually want to roll with that guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, man, what's your name? He told me his name. And I'm like, how long have you been training for? And he's like, like 3 or 4 months. And he's like, but I wrestled. I'm like, oh, God, okay, this is going to be fun.
You're like, oh,
So
look
like,
at the
you're not a
time
brand
to
new white
leave.
belt. Yeah. And we rolled, and he was strong and good. He understood leverage, and I mean, better than just somebody who'd never had any of that experience on any mats before. But he was chaotic. He was wild. And in those wild moments, he created space that I was able to capitalize on. Not because I'm more athletically talented than him.
Yeah.
No, he's definitely more skilled and talented than I am. I've just been doing it longer. So I don't respond to the chaos the same way that he does. He doesn't know what to do. And in those moments, they're little moments of exploitation for me.
Yeah.
He makes a wrong move, escape. He makes a wrong move, take his back, makes a wrong move, exposes his neck or his arm, whatever it may be. And then you jump on that opportunity and you exploit it. And that's what happens in real life.
Yeah.
You have people who have never familiarized yourself with hardship, and then they expose themselves and they get chaotic and they get frustrated and they get emotional and they break down, and then they lose whatever war they're waging. So the best way to overcome that is to be aware that things are going to come up, anticipate what those might be, prepare for those things, and then know your role when they happen. And your role is to be just the solid foundation that everybody else can lean on. That is our job.
Yeah. I love the thought process of always thinking, if I can't handle my current circumstance from a cool collective mind, then I'm not going to do well in these kind of situations, right? If I'm struggling with my first world problems, what makes me think I'm going to deal with more difficult things? And I think about that because it inspires me to go, hey, it puts things in perspective, right? Kip, you got this. This is easy, right? This is the easy stuff. And it kind of, because I sometimes get in my own head, and I'll get mad in my current situations. I will lash out. I'll lose my ego, or I won't check my ego. Those things come up, and they shouldn't in the grand scheme of things, right? Because of what I'm dealing with isn't that difficult. And so I need to even rise up in the current circumstances. So that way, when things do get difficult, I'm ready for that. And I love the analogy of jiu-jitsu because, well, it's the perfect analogy of it, right? I had to train on Friday. We had just probably about 12 black belts. I'm the small one, right? So average weight, maybe 220, 240, just big boys.
Big boys.
And I had moments of my soul breaking where I wanted to give up. I just wanted to give up. And my training partners, I didn't let myself give up, and they wouldn't let me rest. Does it make sense? And I remember pushing when there was no pushing left in me, just still going hard, even though I'm like, I can't breathe. You know, so much that when I got done with the roll, I'm like trying to catch my breath, you know, like I've been swimming and holding my breath forever, right? And I can't stop sweating. It was just grueling train. And I remember leaving the gym thinking, most people have no idea what that feels like. They've never experienced such massive amount of despair. Yeah, just despair.
Just get up. What's your problem? Can't you just get up?
Yeah, and because I've never experienced it, right? Other than on the mats. And people have no idea what it means to have your spirit broken. You know, and some of these higher belts, that's what they do. That's the game. Is first I'm going to break your spirit first, and then I'll submit you. Like I want you to give up, and give it to me because of of me breaking your soul. You know, that's what this guy Jason South does to me. He breaks my soul first, and then he humiliates me with the submission. Right, but most people never experience it. And so how do we expect to deal with these difficult situations if the worlds that we live in is so soft and we're not challenging ourselves mentally by pushing the extra rep in the gym, by doing hard cardio, by doing jiu-jitsu, by doing these other things to really test ourselves and to get the reps of mental fortitude.
Yeah, I love it. A couple of MMA questions related here, because I like talking about this stuff. First one, what is your soul crushing move? Like if you want to crush somebody's soul, what do you go to? What's your go-to?
Yeah. So can I give you two? So my position.
I said, what is your one?
The one?
Go for it. I'm giving you a hard time.
Because one's a submission, one's not.
What's your position?
So the position is
go for it.
Double under stack in a tournament, especially with the gi, where I can cross grip on the collar. I'll grab the back of the belt and I will stack them on their neck, and I'll drive my forehand right into their esophagus, and I just go and guys will fight it, and you can feel them move their legs out of the way. That's their give
and
up.
Then
They're like,
you
just pass. They're just begging to be passed. So that's probably that's the move. The submission. I like a high mount, a high S mount. So I'll go high. So the arms are up like this, and I'm tight.
S-mount.
Yeah.
Both arms in or one arm in, like going for the triangle from a mounted position?
So I always go into mount across the chest. I never mount on the hips.
Right.
So I will I'll gather the arms together and mount super high, and then I'll S mount, so I'm just almost triangling both arms,
sitting right on.
And there's no strength once their arms are up above their head. And so now it's like I just grab an arm and shoulder lock it, or arm bar. It's just miserable. It's like, it's nice to hang out right there and just smash.
So good. So good. For me, the position, look, you're a black belt, so like you can get into those positions. I don't ever want it to make it sound like I can do this like all the time against anybody else.
Either can I. Yeah.
But the position I love, where it's just soul crushing, is knee on belly.
Ah, yeah.
I love knee on belly. Yeah. Dude, I love it. You wrap up one of their arms, you got their collar, you're digging your knee in their gut or their sternum, wherever you want, and they just cannot escape, and it's hilarious. But I've had that happen to me plenty of times.
Yeah. I love it.
The other question is, have you ever pressure tapped?
Have I pressure tapped someone, or have I tapped to pressure before?
No. Have you been tapped, or like have you tapped out to pressure?
Yes. Yeah. Not recently.
Oh man.
Right? I'm
sure that will happen, but I'm like, dude, I'm like, I will not. I had this guy I was rolling with, and he was so like just heavy. He was big. He was heavy. He wasn't just sitting on me either. He was being technical, but just so much pressure. And there was a few times where I'm like, nope, you don't tap to pressure. You do not tap to pressure.
Yeah, I don't
but
anymore.
It was hard, man.
Yeah, I don't anymore. Like my ego's like, I'm like, nah, like I'm okay. But one of our instructors or professors at Unified, Johnny, he has a knack for just making it miserable. And I remember once I made the mistake. I had my arms out. He had me in side control, and I was swimming an arm in across my chest, and then he used my arm against my chest and
push.
And I actually thought maybe something might break. It was like super painful, and I'm like, and something might break, and so I tapped. But with my arm in between our bodies, it made it like way worse. Like my ribs were all getting contorted with my forearm.
I can't remember. It might have been Dedeco who showed me this. And I can't remember whether it was their owner. I think it was actually when you're on top, putting your fist like a hammer,
in the middle of their back,
on their sternum.
Yeah.
Or that's what it was. Yes,
under their back,
it was in the
between
middle of their back.
That. Yeah,
that's what it was. Yep, that's what it was.
That's dirty.
That's exactly right.
That's super good.
Yeah, dirty. I like dirty. I like the dirty game. One more jiu-jitsu thing, but it's in the context of this. Jocko with Victory MMA over the weekend. I think it was over the weekend or last week. They had a fire at Victory, and it didn't burn the building, but they're done. They're out of commission for months.
Yeah, it looked horrible.
And I watched. Yeah, it was rough. Yeah. I watched Jocko's video where he did a tour of the thing after the fact. Man, you want to talk about calm, cool, and collected? That's his baby. You know, that's his business. That's not only his baby and his business, it's his way of life. He wants to introduce people to that. And he was there and he's like, hey, look, this is what's happening. Thanks to the firefighters. Thanks to everybody who helped save the building.
Yeah, building was still
No
safe.
one got hurt. We're going to rebuild. We're going to go over here temporarily while we really rebuild this. Talk about being calm, cool, and collected when shit hits the fan. I mean, if you guys haven't seen that, go watch that. Like, that's just an example in action that you ought to be aware of, because I really can't right offhand think of a better example than that, at least in, the last couple of weeks here. So,
yeah.
All right, what's next?
All right, Steven Ragger, what kind of filters do you use in your decision-making process, if any? When asked to commit to anything in multiple ways, I use a filtering system. I took this from the Gap and Gain. As the business guru, I'm assuming he meant to write, I was still struggling from being overcommitted in multiple ways. This helped me dial it back and get focused in. So now I'm making more imperfect progress. So I'll leave it as that. He kind of has a list of all the things that he's doing, but I think the intent of the question is, what's your filter, right, when it comes to making decisions? And it sounds a little bit around overcommitting and what you say yes to versus no and whatnot.
Yeah, so I like what he's talking about with the gap in the game. I think that a couple of things here. There are people who are under-committers and people who are over-committers.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. Like, by default, they just overcommit and they run themselves ragged and they can't do anything exceptionally well because they've got too much going on.
Yeah.
And their biggest challenge is making sure that their default goes from yes to no. They need to change their default to no. But that's not everybody.
Yeah.
Because you also have under-committers. You have guys that are like,
I can't do that.
And they might not vocalize it this way, but I'm scared, or I can't do that, or I have plans, or what if this happens? Or those are also the guys who like to overanalyze everything, the paralysis by analysis. And so those are under-committers. And those guys might need to learn to say yes as a default as opposed to say no. So you really got to figure out which type of person you are. I personally am more of an over-committer. So I will take on everything. I want to be useful. I want to try new things. I want to experiment. I want to make money. I want to have good friendships and good experiences.
You want it all.
I'll say yes to everything.
Yeah.
I want it all. Absolutely. And I know that the only way to have it all is to take action. And so I tend to overcommit at times. So I like the gap in the game. But I think the biggest thing for me, because I'm more of an intuitive person, I'm not the analyzer. I'm not the person who's going to look at like, well, if I do this relative to this, then this will produce X, Y, and Z result, and that will produce this result. I don't typically do that. I'm pretty intuitive, and a lot of you guys are as well. So for me, I intuitively know what I should say yes to and what I should say no to. But for me, the best thing that I can do, because I am an overcommitter and I am an intuitive decision maker, is to just give myself a little bit of margin.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of space. Hey, I don't need to make that decision right now. So when somebody asks me if I can do something or commit to something or come on a podcast or go on a vacation or go on a trip or go on a hunt or do this thing or do that thing, I like to ask this question: when do you need an answer by? Because I want to respect that individual. Now, I don't think I owe everybody a response, by the way, especially strangers who reach out, because I can get inundated with just responding to people. And just because somebody reaches out, I don't feel like I owe them a response. But if it's somebody in my circle that I feel like I owe a response, if you reached out, Kip, and you said, hey, can you do this thing? I'd say, hey, when do you need an answer by?
Yeah.
And you might say, well, I'd really like to know by the end of the weekend. Okay. Now what I can do is I can take the information that I have and I can make a decision over a couple of days and I can let it marinate a little bit. Okay, what other obligations do I have? Is that even something that I want to do? Does that sound fun? Does that sound engaging? Yeah. And it might be no. And the other part of giving yourself some margin is that I can come up with a way, because I think people who say no have a hard time, especially nice guys, saying no, but it gives you a way to frame the no. I'm not saying you should lie or make up an excuse,
but
it gives you a way to frame
right?
that. Right. And it gives you a way to frame that. Another question that I might ask is and I actually learned this, I think, from you, Kip, is if you were to say, hey, can you can you help coach me, for example, on like some business stuff? Let's just say you said that. I might say, well, when do you need an answer by? And you'd say, well, I need an answer by this weekend if possible. And the next question is, tell me what all that entails to you. Like, what does that look like to you? And you might say, well, man, I'd really like to just get on a call once a week. Outside of that, maybe just send you a couple of texts. And okay, all right, good. Now I know what you're expecting. But if I just say yes, you might think, hey, I want to talk to you every day, at 9 a.m., set a meeting Monday through Friday. Nope, not doing that. So when you actually ask that question, what all does that entail? Then I don't want to say you're pigeonholing, but you're obligating the person, the asker, to manage the expectation.
Yeah.
So when you come to me and you say, hey, I'd just like to get together every week, and maybe outside of that, a few texts per week. And so we meet once on Wednesday for 4 weeks, and your text is like every couple of days, and then it's every day, and then it's every couple of hours. I can come back and say, hey, Kip, look, I know you have a lot of questions, and I appreciate that. But when I said yes to this, we had talked about a few texts per week and one call per week, which I was happy to do. Yeah. Based on my schedule, this has nothing to do with you. Based on my schedule, I cannot commit to more than that. So if I would have known it was different, I probably would have said no. So I either have to back out and I can't do this, or we have to go back to our previous arrangement, which is what you communicated to me. Then it puts the responsibility where it lies on the shoulders of the person asking for you to do something. So those two questions have really, really been a lifesaver, in addition to creating some margin so I can think about, is this something I want to do? And if it's not, come up with a respectable answer to that individual.
Yeah. Ryan, do you mind sharing your thought process around when you choose to do a minimal viable product to something? Like, for me, my natural tendency will be to look at the long-term strategy and what this looks like and blah, 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 to make my decision. But I don't think you're that way. And I love that about you. In fact, it's something that I've been trying to do more often. And we've talked about it, right? You don't know how to get to the peak until you get over a ridge. And so you have a you default go-to action. What's your thought process around that? Because one, you make a decision, but it's almost like you're also not dragging the expectation of the long-term outcome. It's almost like you go into the decision like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Let's give it a try. And then what's the reassess process and mindset kind of going into that?
I think you alluded to it earlier. Here's what I would say is detachment from the result. And you talked a little bit about that earlier when it came to the doing the right or wrong thing. People will attach themselves to the result. Well, if I do the right thing, what if this and this and this? That's irrelevant. Okay. Is it right or wrong?
No. Yeah.
The result doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, look, we need to be aware of the result, because to go to our second question, you need to be prepared for the fallout you're going to deal with. Yeah. But it's still irrelevant. Like, right is right, wrong is wrong. And so for me, when it comes to, well, let me give you a prime example of this. So I'm putting together an annual men's conference this year. It's going to be in the fall. It's just outside of St. Louis. I'll get you all the details, guys. My goal, my long-term goal, is to create the largest men's conference, physical men's conference in the world. That's my goal. To reach as many men as I possibly can in a physical environment where we're meeting face to face, we're hearing from great speakers, exclusively men. That's my goal. I'm not going to accomplish that this year. Now, if I do, cool, great. I don't think I will. So I'm going to be realistic about it. But I can start working towards it. So we've secured a place to do this. It can hold up to 900 people. By the way, 900 isn't even my goal. My goal is to have 500 people at this thing, which is 5 times what I've ever had before. So I'm still exceeding what I've done in the past. I'm still striving for something great, but I'm giving myself some leeway to grow. And if we hit 900, we got the space to do it. So by all means. Yeah. But my default is always minimum viable product. Always. Yeah. Because I'm not doing brain surgery. If this doesn't work, I'm not going to kill somebody. That's it. That's like the only reason you wouldn't do minimum viable product is if there's some catastrophic outcome to doing it any other way. And 99.9% of the time, it's not catastrophic.
Yeah. But people think it is.
It just means you'll be out. They do.
Yeah.
So give me what somebody would think, because I can't even fathom what it might be. If I'm putting together a men's conference, what could somebody possibly think that would be catastrophic about not a single person turning up?
I think it's
the worst possible outcome, by the way.
I think it's the story, right? It is, Ryan says, I'm going to do this big conference. I put it out there on the web. Everyone heard it on the podcast. And the event comes and no one shows up. It's just ego. It's what it means about you. But people take that story of what it might mean about you as like life and death. You know what I mean? And thus they won't take action and all these other things because of the fear of what that would make them look like.
Yeah, you're gonna look dumb. Okay. Who's going to know? Nobody came to your event. Nobody's going to know how dumb you look.
Yeah, it's true. But even if they did know, like, it's
and I'm
part
not
of the
discounting,
rep, right?
Look, it is. And that's the thing. Imagine this. You go watch two professional football teams play, and one team says, we guarantee a victory. We're definitely going to win this game. And then after the first quarter, you're like, you're down 7-0. You guys suck. See, I knew you couldn't win. Bro, it's the first quarter. Give us a second.
Game's not over. Yeah.
We still got 3 quarters to play here. And then we can talk about, did I lose or did I win? And by the way, if you still lost, so what? When I did my very first event, a lot of guys have heard this story. Yeah. I didn't have not a single person register.
I think it's super
not
funny.
One.
I love it.
It's funny. You know what else it is though, Kip?
It was stressful, I'm sure.
Is it inspirational?
Yeah.
No, is it inspirational?
I think
Or
it
is it like, do you think less of me?
No.
Do you think less of me?
No, absolutely not.
Nobody thinks less of me because of it.
Yeah.
Even my divorce, you could take that. That happened a year and a half ago. Oh, Ryan, he's a loser. He sucks at relationships. He can't do the blah, blah, blah. All the little people chirping about it. And now, and I know we're not deep into this thing, but a year and a half later, there's a lot of people who are like, oh man, you've handled this really well. Right, because I'm 42 years old. The game isn't over yet.
Yeah.
Now, I might have lost that battle. I might have faltered and slipped and fell and made some mistakes in that chapter. But if I lived a life expectancy, I have nearly 40 more years of my life. You're counting me out before the game is over. It's not over for me. The only time the game is over is when the game is over, meaning you die.
Yeah.
And at death, then we can go ahead and we can tally and see the good versus the bad and all that kind of stuff and decide, was this man an asset or a liability? I'm going to be an asset. I know I am. Just because I had that thing go down doesn't mean that I'm a liability for the rest of my life. We need to learn to detach ourselves from not only future outcomes, but also past outcomes. And I'm not saying excuse yourself for your wrongdoings in your past. Embrace them, learn from them, and then sever it. Like sever that tie. Yep, I went through divorce. It's severed. Meaning I'm not going to wrap up my identity in that. That's something that happened. That's true. There were some things that I did wrong. That's true. But that is not me today. I'm completely different than I was a year and a half, 2 years ago, because I made the decision to be that. And so minimum viable product, always, yes, always, 100%.
Love it. I love the
I can't think of a time where
game's not over yet, right? I love that game's not over yet.
It's not over.
So true. T-shirt, next T-shirt. All right.
I like that.
Rob Thompson, I do too. Is there a limit to how transparent you are with those you lead? Where does the transparency begin to erode credibility if it does?
Yes, of course there's a limit.
Yeah.
Of course there's a limit. You know, I can't, for example, when if we go back to the family dynamic, like I'm not going to disclose everything about the entire situation with my ex-wife and with my children.
Doesn't serve them.
That sounds ridiculous. Yep. That you just said the answer right there. What is the point of being transparent? Okay, so here's what a lot of people will do. They'll be transparent because they want people to tap them on the shoulder and say, you're amazing, you're wonderful, you're good, look how strong you are, you can do this, I believe in you. And the motive is, what can I get from this from other people? Yeah. Transparency in leadership, the motivating factor should always be, what are my people going to get from this? So my job is to be as transparent as I need to be, no more, no less, to allow my people a path forward. So when I'm talking with my children, if one of my kids gets bullied at school, then I can share a story of when I got bullied at school, or the first fight that I ever got in and I got my butt handed to me. But I'm sharing that for relatability. I'm sharing that so that my child knows that he's not the only, or she's not the only one who's ever gone through this, and you can rise above it and you can get better in spite of it and you can learn from it. And it's the same thing with a professional organization or your wife or significant other or whoever it might be. Transparent to the degree that it serves them, not you. If you ever start getting your rocks off because people are telling you how wonderful you are because you shared about some horrible story in the past, you know your motive is faulty. You should not want to be transparent.
Yeah.
But you should be transparent because that's what some people will need from you. And by the way, not everybody needs the same level of transparency. Kip, the conversations you and I have are different than the conversations I have with my girlfriend, are different than the conversations I have with my kids, are different than the conversations I might have with somebody on the internet. They're different because our relationships are different. Ours is different than my kids, than my girlfriends, than random strangers on the internet. And so I treat it accordingly. But yeah, of course there's a limit.
Do you think most men struggle with too much transparency or not enough? Like, where's the typical barrier?
Too little.
Too little.
Too little.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an ego-driven thing, right? So we're afraid to share our own inadequacies. And so what will we do? Let's say a friend comes to you and says, man, Kip, man, my wife and I are struggling. Man, she said she wanted a divorce and I don't really know what to do. Our default as men is to be like, well, you know, in my marriage, we do this and this is how great it is and everything else, except for you just got into an argument with your wife 24 hours earlier.
And she was telling me she wants to leave me.
Yeah. Right.
Why aren't you sharing that?
Mention that. So what would be better is to say, hey, you know what? Oh man, I know it. My wife and I just got into an argument last night, and she said she's been thinking about divorce. And we had a really good conversation, and she came to me this morning and she said, you know, I was rash and I was emotional. I don't really want a divorce. I'm having a hard time. And so we worked through it in a positive way, and this is what we did. Mm-hmm. That's a great level of transparency. It's honest. It's serving the other individual because you have their best interest in mind. And you're not over-representing yourself.
Yeah.
You're accurately representing who you are and what's worked for you and what hasn't. And I think that's a much better way to lead, but our ego has a difficult time allowing us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wayne McPherson, most men join the IC for brotherhood and or accountability, yet some don't join a team unless helped and encouraged to do so. Do you think this is more nurture society's influence on men to be separated and less trusting of one another due to division, or nature, man tends to be a proud lone wolf, uncomfortable of reaching out to other men?
I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
More often than not. It's, again, the underlying theme for this conversation, Kip, has been ego.
Yeah.
It's our ego. And I don't know that guys want to be a lone wolf. I don't know that. I think
I don't think so. I think it
we're
goes
getting
against
the
human nature.
symptoms correct,
Yeah.
but we're getting the diagnosis wrong.
Yeah.
The symptoms are they don't join a team. The diagnosis is not because they want to be lone wolves. It's because they don't want to expose themselves to other people and they don't want to do the hard work required to improve. And if I can lie to myself really well, right? If I don't go to the gym this morning, I can say, oh, well, I was pretty active over the weekend. I didn't get much sleep. I've got a busy day. My day starts early. There's all sorts of things I can say. But if I ask you, Kip, to hold me accountable and we're working together and I say, yeah, Kip, I was just tired. Like I had a long day. You'd say, so what? I don't care. So you can get more sleep tonight then. Go to the gym. You said you were going to go to the gym. You can catch up on your sleep tonight. Go to bed earlier. Like why is that the thing that got sacrificed?
Yeah.
That's way harder to deal with than me just continuing to live in mediocrity with the excuses I make for myself. I know myself really well. I know how to deceive myself very, very well because I know myself. And because I know myself, I know what lies I tell myself, and I have to be very vigilant against those things. But it's harder to do with another person at times.
Yeah.
Because they're not emotionally wrapped up in your bullshit. Right? Like I make that story and you're like, I don't care. And you don't. You shouldn't. I don't care about you're tired. So what? Go to the gym. Get more sleep tonight. I don't care that you were active last weekend. You said you wanted to be active every day. What does what you did yesterday have to do with today? That's what a true accountability partner will do. And that's confrontational. A lot of guys don't like that. I don't like that. Nobody likes that.
No, it's difficult. I wonder too how much of this has to do with people don't want to have to ask, right? Like it's almost like a form of affirmation that I got coached, that I'm wanted versus I had to go ask to be on a team. And there's an associated, maybe as a result of low self-esteem. Do you think that plays a part at all?
I never really considered that, honestly. I because I don't feel that way.
Well, your self-esteem is enough for all of us.
No,
you know,
right.
So.
Yeah. Fair. Hold on. That's good. That was really good. You're getting clever, Kip. Yeah. You're doing good.
Speaking truth. Yeah.
I can't even focus on what the question was now.
But like they sit
I don't
back.
know. Is it
wanting?
Are you
to
really
be,
asking?
Wanting to like. Well, maybe they're not. Maybe they. I'm just curious. Like, do you guys feel like they're asking to be on a team versus being pulled into a team? And there's a sense of being wanted that is present there that's not present in the other scenario. I don't know.
Look, I don't think being wanted is a bad thing. So if you'd rather approach it that way, then be a superstar.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to go ask to be on a team because everybody will be coming to you. Like that's an easy solution.
Yeah.
Like if you really want to be asked to be part of things, then be as valuable as you possibly can and people will ask you. Like that's an easy solution. Simple solution.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
I don't know. I don't think that's the issue.
No. Okay.
It's a good question, but I could be wrong.
There's a similar question. Well, it's a good segue, and it's from Eric Tyler on Facebook, and I really wanted to make sure we covered it because I think it's such a great question. If you don't mind, I'm going to jump to the Facebook questions here. So Eric Tyler,
let's get to it.
How do I stop feeling lonely and insecure because I've never dated before? I almost had a date, but I ended up getting ghosted. I'm fixing to turn 25, and it's killing my self-esteem and confidence. Just really like we want.
Ooh, I like this.
I know we need to help this brother out because this is legit, right? And I think a lot of people can kind of relate to Eric here. Yeah.
Well, the first thing you need to realize is the premise of your question is way out in left field. You're wrong. And I say that with the love I have for you and you wanting to win. You think, by the nature of your question, that being validated by a woman is what's going to give you security and confidence. It's not. There's not enough women There's not enough attractiveness. There's not enough nakedness. There's not enough sex. There's not enough of any of that to make you feel secure and confident with yourself. Because the moment you get a girl, if you're waiting for her to validate you, you're going to want another one, a different one with bigger boobs, one with a better face, one with a better body, one who does this, one who does that. And it's never going to be enough for you. Never. Yeah. So the premise is off. The question should be worded, how do I build security and confidence in myself? You're worried about a woman validating you. She cannot. I love women. She can't validate you. It might feel good for a while, don't get me wrong. Having a woman who's attracted to you, like, feels good, but it's empty at the end of the day if you can't make yourself feel good about who you are. So the question is, how do you make yourself secure? How do you make yourself confident? And the way you do that is by winning the battle with your integrity. I'd be willing to bet that you woke up this morning and you had a little bit of an idea of how you wanted today to go. And so let me ask you, how is it going? Did you get up when your alarm went off? Did you go work out first thing? Did you get into work with a to-do list already created and you got going, or did you get sucked down the rabbit hole of social media and distraction? Were you productive at work? Did you make the calls you needed to make? Did you serve your employer and your coworkers the way they needed to be served? Did you mow your neighbor's lawn? Like, did you go make yourself better this afternoon? Did you read scriptures if that's your thing? What promises did you make to yourself, and have you kept them at, this thing comes out at 5 a.m. every morning Eastern? Where are you at? And how can you get back in integrity? What dreams do you have about your body, about a business you want to start, about an adventure that you want to go on, about the way that you want to show up and communicate and look and present yourself? And are your actions aligned with that? If they're not, then again, no woman is going to do it for you for any sustainable period of time. But here's the ironic thing, and a little bit of cruelty in it as well. The more that you begin to learn how to validate yourself and build confidence in yourself through building integrity, women will be attracted to that. Employers will be attracted to that. Friends will be attracted to that. Bosses, coworkers, colleagues will be attracted to that. And so you don't need their validation anymore, but you'll have enough attention from women or from friends or employers or clients that you'll never want again. But you can't focus it on externals. You have to focus on the internals. You get that right? Everything else takes care of itself.
Spot on. Trust me, I literally had this conversation with someone the other day, a friend of mine, and they're talking about how lonely they are, divorced, single parent, and life's lonely and they can't, quote unquote, find love. And my response was something to the extent of, and so are many people that are married. It doesn't make a difference, right? If you're low self-esteem, if you're feeling lonely, be careful to get in the trap of thinking that's going to be validated by someone like you're saying, Ryan. And most importantly, it's unfair to them. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine someone choosing to be with you and whether they have self-esteem and confidence and their feeling of loneliness is all based upon how you show up every day? It's exhausting. And that will come with not regret. What's the word I'm looking for? They'll hold that against you.
Yeah.
Even if they give it to you temporarily, they're going to despise you eventually when you rely on someone like that in a relationship. So it's unfair to them too.
Well, there's a lot of manipulation that comes with it too, right? Like if I need validation from a woman, I'm going to try to manipulate her into doing and saying things that are going to validate me.
Yeah.
And nobody likes to be manipulated or controlled.
And it's not true anyway, right? When you get what you wanted through manipulation, it's not true. You know, it's just
Right.
another form of a lie that you're feeding yourself. It's now just through a conduit of someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. I wrote something down here, Kip, because you said the way you phrased it was like, I want to find romance or I want to find love, or you said something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote this, I think too often that when men say that, what they're actually saying is, I want to find somebody who will love me. Not, I want to find somebody who I can love.
Yeah.
Like, think about the difference. And look, I know there's reciprocity. Of course, relationship, you should be loved, they should be loved, everybody should be loved. But I'm saying if your motive is, I need to find somebody to love me, then you're like a puppy dog.
Yeah.
Right? I just want somebody to love me, pay attention to me.
Well, and
you'll find anybody to do that.
And your sovereignty's where, right?
Right? Yeah, good point.
You've granted that power to someone else.
Versus, hey, I want to find somebody to love, which to me means serve.
Yeah.
I want to find somebody that I care about, that I admire, that I respect, that I can see building a future with, and somebody who I can serve. I can show up for them. I can be a sounding board for them. We can do adventures and trips together. I can cook with them. We can raise kids together. Like, I want to serve somebody.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's a little bit of even selfishness in that too, which is okay, because I derive a lot of satisfaction and value from being in service to other people.
Absolutely.
Even in a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
So you can't make these types of decisions in a vacuum where it's like, well, gosh, all I do is love on this person. I don't get anything in return. Well, then maybe you're not doing it right. Because when I love on people, I get a lot of that in return. They may not reciprocate always the way that I want, but it feels pretty good to know I'm capable, to know I can serve other people, to know I'm valuable. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It just works when you do it for those right motives, not the inferior motives.
Totally. When I smash and try to hurt someone on the mats, they just naturally want to give it back. It's a principle of life.
Just the law of reciprocity. That's how it works. Karma. What goes around comes around, both negatively and positively.
Absolutely.
But even that, Kip, like, I know that, again, we'll go back to jujitsu here. Like, you destroy me. Like, I don't really have a chance. Like, there might be, if ever I catch you, it's because I caught you. Like, I did something weird, or you weren't paying attention, or you were experimenting and did something that you shouldn't have. That's the only time I'll be able to catch you. Now, give me 5 years, Kip. Okay? I'm gonna put that out there.
Trust me, I know I'm on your list.
But also, I know that you have a caring heart, even on the mats, because I've seen it.
Yeah.
Like, you'll be submitting me, but then you'll also be coaching me, like, at the same time or after. You might finish the submission, but then afterwards you're like, hey man, can I show you something? I'm like, yeah. Well, you did this, and then I did this, and you did this, and then I did that, and that's how I got you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't share that with me if you didn't care about me, if you didn't want me to improve.
Totally.
Of course. So you can be in those environments. And I've said this before, is not everybody who praises you is your ally, and not everybody who criticizes you is your enemy.
Yeah.
You know, if you have somebody who's close in your corner and they're critiquing and giving you instructive feedback, it might not feel comfortable. That's not your enemy. That guy's trying to help you. Like, pay attention, use a little discernment, because that person is actually coming from a place of service and love for you.
Yeah. I like that. All right. A couple more or one more? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do 2 more. Let's do it on a rapid fire if we can.
All right. So we got toxic workplace, juggling travel, and rites of passage. What do you want?
I'll let you pick. Any of them are fine.
Let's do toxic workplace. All right. Nicholas Wade. It's a phrase people like to throw out. But what do you all consider signs of a toxic work environment? And when's the best time to make an exit from a job that exhibits these things? Thank you for what you do.
I think toxic work environment is no structure, right? Everybody's just doing their own thing. They're not working together as a team.
Yeah.
No room for growth would be a big red flag for me. Like, if nobody's growing, there's no room for growth. Like, what am I doing here? Another one might be that people are not working to serve each other. They're actually undermining each other, right? Oh, so like if something doesn't go wrong, I'm going to throw you under the bus rather than support, edify, and uplift you so we can get the mission accomplished. And then there's other, things, of course, where it's, gossip, yelling, name calling, that sort of behavioral type stuff that I would take issue with. But I think those other things would be a pretty good indicator that you're in a toxic work environment. As far as when is it time to move on, when you feel like you've done everything you can to improve the environment. Yeah. So if you've reached out to your boss and you've not only complained about what's going on, but you've made recommendations, suggestions, if you've tried to actively work with other people by helping them with their projects, giving them tools and resources of your own they can use to accomplish tasks, taking the higher road when somebody throws you under the bus or belittles you or there's gossip going on. If there's gossip going on and you might say something like, hey, you know what, guys, like, I'm not really interested in having this conversation. I want to keep my head down and go to work and make sure we get this thing done. So like I say we avoid talking ill about that other person or personal stuff. Like, let's get this stuff done. If you've done all of that, then it's time to move on. The only other thing I would say with this question is we never want abrupt starts and stops. And this is particularly true in a business relationship or career. Like, you don't want to start, then quit, and then have to look for a job, and then start, and then quit, and have to look for a job. Those types of things should be seamless. So if I were to stop Order of Man today, like, I've built enough other relationships that I could have a dozen different opportunities lined up within a 24-hour window because I've been building relationships, not for the idea that I'm going to stop Order of Man and do something different. But if it were to happen for one reason or the other, I can seamlessly integrate and navigate into a new work environment. And so as an employee, you should always know, and this goes to the first question about shit hitting the fan. If you get laid off, you should have prepared for that. That's a risk that is always going to be looming over your head as an employee. I'm not saying your employer is a dick. I'm not saying he's looking to lay you off or fire you, but it is a potential risk. And if that's the case, you need to be aware of it. You need to prepare for it. And everybody, I don't care if you're the person in the back room doing the books to the person up front selling the thing. Every single person should be building their network as a basic fundamental duty of their current job.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, you're going to find yourself in a hurting position when you do get laid off or the business goes under or you find yourself in a toxic work environment.
Yeah. No, that's great advice, man. It's ironic that we lose sight that most opportunities are always through someone, right? So it makes sense, right, for us to be doing a good job networking and building our relationships with other individuals. And we think it's the relationship between Kip and some tax ID and logo. It's like, no.
Right.
The company doesn't employ you. Bob does. Right? The other people at companies, that's who's employing you, not some generic company. You don't work for Amazon. You work for Jay at Amazon in the grand scheme of things.
I don't even think you work for Jay at Amazon.
Yeah.
I don't even think you work for Jay at Amazon. I think you work for everybody who's buying your products and services.
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately. I love that.
Like, I know Jay might pay you, but if you don't have clientele, Jay's not going to have any money to pay you with.
Yeah.
So I look at every email that I might need to send, every phone call I need to field, every conversation that I have as a networking opportunity. And I either take a withdrawal from the relational bank account or a deposit. So if a guy, for example, comes to me and says, hey, Ryan, I'm thinking about leaving the Iron Council. Can we go ahead and close our membership? And I'm like, yeah, well, screw you, you piece of shit. Like, we didn't want you here anyways.
Yeah.
And I know that's extreme, but I've had emails that are similar to that. Like, well, you're a loser because you're not and you should. Deposit or withdrawal? Definitely a withdrawal. But if I say, hey, man, look, I understand things come up. If it's financially related, we have a financial assistance fund. We'd love to help you out so you can stay in the Iron Council. If it's something else, no problem. I wish you the best on your path. We'll get it resolved for you. And if you ever decide to come back, let me know because you have a seat at the table here. Deposit or withdrawal. Same outcome. The guy ends up leaving the Iron Council either way. Deposit or withdrawal. Deposit. What's that guy going to do? When he's in a better position, maybe he'll come back. Maybe he'll tell 10 of his friends. Maybe he's got a great business and one day he's like, you know what? Like, this business blew up. I think I'd like to sponsor Ryan's podcast at $5,000 a month. Like, things will happen. Just be decent to people.
Totally. Yeah, I like it. All right. Austin Chamberlain. We talk a lot about things for sons like rites of passage and teaching them masculinity. What are some important lessons that a father specifically can teach his daughters?
It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. You know, I know we talk to men and I've thought a lot about this question, but I actually think there's a lot of situations where the things that we teach to our sons might actually be more important to our daughters. Kip, you and I have talked about self-defense, for example. Is it more important that a man learns how to defend himself or a woman? What do you think?
I think a woman. I'm more concerned about my daughters being able to defend themselves than my boys.
And I don't think that's unfounded. Like, Jocko said this years ago. I heard this, and it was a very interesting thing. He said, sometimes a man has what another man wants, but all the time a woman has what another man wants. Right? Like, I might have money, or I might have a car, or I might have something that another man wants, and so he breaks into my house, or he mugs me, or he carjacks me. But a woman always has what another man wants.
Yeah.
So I think self-defense is something that would be very, very important to teach your daughter. I think sovereignty, so she doesn't have to rely on a horrible man. And by the way, I'm not saying by any means that all men are horrible. You know that if you've been listening to this for any amount of time. So I don't ever want this, what I'm saying now, to be interpreted that way. But we know they're out there. That's why this mission exists. So we can be men and call other men to be the same. Which means that there's men who aren't acting like men out there, which means that our daughters will probably bump into them at some point. But if my daughter has to rely on a man financially because she's in financial hardship and she doesn't have any sort of skill set that she can go out and market herself, then that's a problem. Yeah. If she can't defend herself in a realistic, reasonable way, then that could potentially be a problem. So I think all of the things are the same, but I also think this is important too. And this is the difference between a man and a woman. One of the differences. I think it's important that we allow women to be women and that we honor femininity in women. Women are supposed to be beautiful. They're supposed to be loving. They're supposed to be kind and nurturing and empathetic and beautiful. And I'm not just talking about physical beauty. I'm talking about inside, spiritual, emotional, mental. I appreciate feminine women because they bring an element to the discussion that men generally don't bring on their own. We're hard and we're disciplined and we're focused and that's good too. But we have to have both. And I don't want to break women of that. I don't want to strip them of that because of the realities of the world. I would love for my daughter to be able to be feminine, beautiful and lovely and kind and empathetic, and also have skill sets to be able to take care of herself in a meaningful way and have some sovereignty so she's not reliant on men all the time and she's not defenseless against men. What would you add though, Kip?
The only thing I would add...
Can I say one other thing about that? So the answer to making sure that your daughter learns about femininity, like not feminism, right? Beautiful, because that's not feminine at all. They should come up with a different word for it. It's not beautiful. It's hideous. It's gross. Yeah. Is to have lovely women in your daughter's life. That could be your wife, your girlfriend, her grandmother, people in the community, people at church organizations that are lovely, beautiful, kind, empathetic women. They can't learn it from you. You don't have it to the degree that women do. So just like I would say, I had a woman the other day, she's like, I can't remember the post, but she says, I'm trying to be a mother to my son and his father. I'm like, well, you're going to fail on that.
Not going to work. Lady.
I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but you're not his father. And this is, people will say, well, happy Father's Day. And women will say, well, I'm a father too. You're not a father. You're a single mother.
Yeah.
You're not his father. I understand that you have to try to play both roles, but the best thing you can do in that situation is get your daughter and son around other men.
Yeah.
Men are fathers. Women are mothers for a reason. It works.
Yeah. Okay. The one thing I was going to just add, I want to add, actually, I want to add to your list at all, but maybe a distinction is how it gets perceived will be different between your sons and your daughters, right? Your son's looking to you as a model to who he can become and what's possible for him. Your daughter more likely is identifying what a man should be like in her life. And so just always keep that in mind. We are showing them the example of what future men, boyfriends and husbands look like for them based upon how we show up, where our sons are probably just trying to be like us.
I agree. I was writing this down. I said, your son will look to you will look to you for who to be. Your daughter will look to you for who to be with.
Yeah, I like that.
So absolutely.
Cool.
Kip, I know I got on a little bit of rant on some of those things. I'm fired up. I'm passionate about some of these things today. So I hope it didn't come across as like, I don't know, something other than I intended. I'm just excited about it. And these are conversations that we need to have. So
no, I agree. I mean, it's the only threat is it's so easy to rat hole on it. We could just talk about one thing just for an hour or two, but yeah, so important.
I'm excited to see how our headline segment goes. And I'm wondering, like in my head, I'm kind of wondering, like, is this going to be a 4th show per week? I don't know, but that is something I'm thinking about. So we'll see how it goes.
Or you start realizing what kind of news I'm reading and you're like, all right, Kip, you know what? You can't bring headlines to the table. I don't know what you're watching.
Steve, come on. Let's go. We need relief.
That's funny. All right, so let's wrap up. So,
all right, brother, bring us home.
Key thing, you got a couple weeks. We're going to open up the enrollment for the Iron Council. To learn more, orderofman.com/Iron Council. There is the Battle Ready program for you guys that aren't interested in joining the IC, or maybe that's in the future. You can sign up for the Battle Ready. That's a 12-week program. And that's orderofman.com/Battle Ready. And as always, connect with Mr. Mickler on Instagram and X at Ryan Mickler. And I don't know the latest. I should have asked before we started, but are we full for the uprising?
I think we may have one cancellation, so there might be one opening right now. There may be. So if you're interested, go check quick. It might already be sold out. I don't know. But if we do, we have one spot left. And that's at orderofman.com/uprising.
Excellent. Anything else, sir?
All right, guys. That's it. Guys, great questions today. Hopefully Kip and I gave you some things to consider. Kip, how to connect with you is the only other thing I would say, because I'd love these guys to be able to connect with you as well.
Yeah, for sure. You can connect with me on Instagram primarily at Kip Sorensen, KIPPSORENSEN.
You said PP, Kip.
I know. You and my kids.
How often do you get that?
Every day from my kids. Whenever I'm anywhere and someone's like, how do you spell your name? My kids
before.
They're all like giggling. Oh, you and my children.
I know. I'd much rather hang out with the kids than the adults any day of the week anyway. So, all right, guys. Hey, good questions today. Appreciate it. Like I said, hopefully we gave you some things to consider. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.